This is going to be our sweetest podcast yet.
Oh, absolutely. And, well, why not talk about something very sweet?
Sweeteners, the good, the bad,
and the ugly. If you don't have your health, what do you have?
You are a functional medicine doctor.
Join us as we blend modern and ancient wisdoms to be well now.
The Be Well Now podcast is back. We talked about cravings last week. I'll put a link to that in the show notes, but you know, people like sweets, and we talked about how cravings are normal, but they're not.
Correct.
They're common, but they're not normal.
Common, but not normal.
So if you have cravings for sugar, if you like sugar, you're a human being, apparently.
Oh, absolutely. You need sugar for all your cells.
People want to know what's okay, what's not, and you felt compelled to talk about that today.
Absolutely. We wanted to give people a list of tools, the good, the bad, and the ugly, of the sweeteners that they could utilize. And one of the reasons this came up to my mind was I was working with a patient and we've had a number of different reviews and lab issues, and we've discussed a variety of different things with him. We've worked with him for a while. And then he mentioned to me that they were using this sweetener, and it caught me. I was caught off guard, I guess, because I felt
sweetener?
Like Splenda.
Okay.
So I was caught off guard, and I thought, wait, why are you using this? This has like been shown to cause cancer. It's been shown to, in research, to cause a variety of gut issues and inflammatory disorders, and you have to be really careful with the sweeteners that you're using. And more often than not, people just want to find something that's quick and easy and cheap, and then they go for those type of simple, basic, artificial sweeteners.
I'm a patient of yours. Nick is my name. You're Dr. Ron Dummar. Community Health and Wellness is the place that we're sitting now, and you have a bunch of patients and you do a lot. Can you introduce yourself real quick? A little bit more about you before we dive into why Splenda's bad, what might be good, and give the people out there a sense of who they're listening to.
Absolutely. So I've been practicing here in Heber for 15 years.
Heber City, Utah.
Heber City, Utah.
We have a worldwide audience.
I know, right?
Come on now.
Heber, I guess. I'm not sure where else there is a Heber town. I know in Arizona as well, I guess. So yes, Heber City, Utah is where I practice. And I've practiced internal medicine, really general practice, but with a focus and an emphasis initially on brain injury traumatology and the rehabilitation process involved with that. So a lot of neurological, we talk a lot about how foods and different chemicals that are found in foods are excitatory or excitotoxic to the brain. And we talked before about how there's a gustatory reaction, a tongue-brain reaction when we consume something that actually can lead to cravings and even to addictions. So that was a little bit of
the dopamine that you get from something really tasty hitting your tongue.
Yeah, and then dopamine receptors being reduced, and then needing to consume more of that to get the same type of dopamine hit. So that was a lot of where my initial interest came, and then I started getting really into gut health. About 10 years ago, really diving into gut health and metabolic health, and just became completely immersed in this world of nutrition, of herbals. I studied Chinese medicine as well. So coming right out of the gate, I actually set up a pain and neurological healing formulary. So I had a pharmacy as well that we worked from. We still fill orders out of that pharmacy based on individual needs. But today we have a full functioning brain rehabilitation center. We test people for balance and stability issues, and also for certain behaviors that are precursors have been shown to demonstrate potential for developing Alzheimer's and dementia. So, and then we develop exercises for them so that they will stave off the development of that. So we've had a lot of interest in neurology and gut health, and as a lot of people have begun to learn and discover, there is a significant connection between the gut and the brain. There's a gut-brain connection.
And sweeteners impact the gut, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they impact the brain.
Obviously. So Splenda, just to get back to that was having a big impact, in your opinion, on his health?
On his health overall. So we pulled Splenda away. We pulled that sweetener, got it out of his house. We gave him a variety of different sweeteners. In a number of my handouts, I do have, these are approved alternative sweeteners or approved sweeteners that are not processed cane sugar or high fructose corn syrup, right? But not every patient reads every word. I do have some patients who read every word that I give to them. And usually they also help to improve what I'm saying or what I'm attempting to say in some of my handouts and some of my writing, which is another issue to deal with as well. But in this case, he had glanced over Splenda as not being an approved
Well, let's talk about sweeteners. You have honey. You've got maple syrup.
100%
sucralose,
organic maple syrup.
Yeah, what are some of the sweeteners out there?
So some of the sweeteners, again, it's raw organic local honey. That's my favorite, 100%. I love raw organic I love raw organic local honey. That's my favorite. You also have raw organic maple syrup. Okay, those are two probably the best sweeteners to be utilizing. You have different palm sugars. So you can have coconut sugar, you can have mesquite, which is a plant that sugar is derived from, but you get a lot of minerals in it as well. So that's actually a decent sweetener. And stevia. So there are 0-calorie sugars, for instance. Sweeteners typically have calories. They tend to. Like sugar has a significant amount of calories. But there are other, like herbs, and even you could call them herbs or spices, but these plants don't really have known calories, but they're very sweet. And one of those is stevia. So stevia is a 0-calorie sweetener, which means if you add stevia to your food, it's not going to spike your blood sugar. So a patient who's a diabetic patient, or they're working for metabolic health in a specific way, and they're attempting to determine, okay, which foods are spiking my blood sugar, and how do I minimize those spikes and dips that we've talked about before in blood sugar, and also in...
So stevia doesn't raise blood sugar?
Stevia does not raise your blood sugar.
That's impressive. And then you like honey for that as well? Honey doesn't?
I do like honey, but some people, again, if you're monitoring... specifically blood sugar, it's possible that honey will raise your blood sugar. In my experience in the research that's on honey, it's actually a blood sugar regulator, though. It's not, the research really doesn't look at it as as something that's going to spike your blood sugar. Now, honey, there are honey products. Let's put it this way. There's a little bear that you can buy at the store that actually has a dye, a golden dye in it. Right? And it's got flavoring. It's got fructose and sucrose, which is really what the blend is. It's really just a high concentration sugar product, but doesn't really resemble honey at all. So when you buy that honey bear off the shelf, it's not really true local organic honey. It wasn't made by the bees. The honey that I'm talking about that you should utilize as a sweetener is raw organic local honey. And that, because it actually has amino acids in it, which are proteins, the building blocks for proteins, right? So it can help with cellular regeneration. Honey can help with tissue healing. It can help in so many different ways. And it actually regulates your blood sugar because it has has hydrogen peroxide in it. And so the bees actually build all of these little pollens, the local pollination, the bacteria species from your area that your body needs to have some sort of understanding of. It programs all of that into the honey, and then you consume it. And it's essentially this immunization, number one immunization that you have to your local environment.
Sweet. I believe we talked about that in another podcast.
We have.
I'm on the honey train for sure. So these are good ones. Do you recommend stevia?
Yeah, so stevia is actually a good option for someone to look at if they're wanting to address how to have something sweet or how to sweeten something without using organic cane sugar.
I asked you about monk fruit, and you pulled off this from the pharmacy.
So this is called lohan guo. It's a Chinese medicine herb. It's been used for thousands of years in Chinese medicine. Lohan guo is monk fruit. It's a sweetener. We use it in a variety of different ways. It's actually 200 times sweeter than sugar is.
Really?
So let's just see how this works for you. So again, this is an herb. So the great thing about monk fruit or lohan guo Lo Han Guo in Chinese medicine, you're going to have the constituent parts. So when you have the fruit, you're going to have all of the fiber with it as well that's in the herb, okay? So when you're consuming it, remember we've talked about before, if you can consume fiber, or if you can have fiber that starts to fill those receptors for insulin or the receptors for sugar, then it's going to reduce the likelihood of spiking. So do you want to put a little on your hand here?
Okay.
Oh, you got a lot. You gotta be careful there, buddy. Now you have to eat all that. I'm just teasing. You can brush it off.
It's very dad of you.
Yeah. You got the bigger amount. You might as well go for it, but this is Lo Han Guo. This is in the Chinese medicine form. But
oh my gosh.
But taste that. Is that like the best?
That's sweet.
You're hoping I would have put this in all of your formulas, huh?
Yeah. Actually, I feel like I've tasted this in some.
Yeah. Yep.
Is this in the nourished blood?
We do put, yes. We do put Lo Han Guo, or we put stevia. Those are, if we're going to sweeten in the pharmacy, we'll use Lo Han Guo or we'll use stevia. Those are our go-tos. I've explored the idea of using like powder. Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Like I said, 200 times. Just brush that off.
Just brush that.
Yeah.
Do you know? So you got a cleaning service in here? I'm pretty sure I've seen you vacuum.
Well, yeah, we'll vacuum. Oh, I can. There's a trash can. I'll just put it over here and we'll take care of it later.
I'll put it on the paper. That'll be a good thing to do.
So there's another one it's kind of similar to Lo Han Guo. It's called Lucuma.
Woo, that's interesting.
Yeah, Lucuma is a sweetener. It's a super fruit that is native to Peru. And the great thing about Lucuma, and again with these, when you're taking things as much as possible from the natural environment to your plate, that's what you're trying to do. So you take this fruit, the Lucuma fruit. In Peru, you're actually getting beta carotene, you're getting iron, you're getting zinc, you're getting a whole significant blend of minerals, even magnesium, that are going to contribute to the health of your muscles. And sorry if people were not hearing me very well.
Oh, no, it's just the angle.
Okay.
That was a subtle thing. We didn't need to address it. That's show business, you know?
There you go, yeah.
You're talking, I'm moving. You're good.
Essentially, patients can utilize Lucuma as well as a low glycemic sugar or sweetener.
I never heard of Lucuma.
Yeah, and so if you like the glycemic index scale, you can have some of these. They'll be even a lower glycemic, you could say, is 30 on the lower glycemic. Lucuma is 4 on the glycemic index, and it's a sweetener. So you're really low there as far as how much spike, if any, you're going to have from your Lucuma.
How did stevia become the big player? I feel like that's the hot sweetener these days. Natural health.
So stevia is a plant, a naturally occurring plant. It's super sweet. Again, it's like Lo Han Guo. It's the leaf is the part that they use, though, not necessarily the fruit. For the sweetening aspect, they use the leaf, so it's a stevia leaf, the plant itself. So when you actually get more like raw, organic, if you get more of a true powdered stevia like we use in the back, there's a bitterness to it as well. So you won't, because you're getting all of that plant structure. And if you've ever imagined chewing or gnawing on a plant, you're going to have some bitter in there. And so when you get really good quality raw, you could say, or fresh stevia, you're going to have a slight bitter flavor in there as well. But the sweetness seems to overwhelm the bitter. And if you have a formula that it works in, it'll blend the bitter and the sweet, and so it kind of subdues the bitterness, and it allows the sweet to come forward, and patients really appreciate that.
What else is recommended in terms of sweeteners?
Or dates. Organic dates. I really like dates, but they do elevate blood sugar. They will elevate blood sugar, but they're really good. They're a wholesome food. They're extremely good in Chinese medicine. We use dates a lot for actually nourishing the blood because they have so many nutrients and so many minerals and so many like antioxidants and flavonols that are a part of it, that it contributes to healthy blood production. It's also a spleen nourishing herb. So dates help with the spleen a lot. And then the spleen plays a significant role in immunity and in blood production. So the spleen will actually send out phagocytic type cells to clear up debris when we've had tissue repair in the body somewhere. It'll clean that up, bring it back to the spleen, it'll chop it up, and turn it into new white blood cells or new blood product. Interesting enough, the spleen is actually it's an organ that is designed to stabilize the blood or the pressure of the blood if you start having a significant amount of blood loss. So if you have a significant amount of blood loss, you have a significant wound or an injury, the spleen will actually contract and push out all of its contents and try to push it in to stabilize the system temporarily and give you a chance of remaining essentially here with us.
Okay.
So
anything else you want to mention in terms of sweeteners you recommend?
I think those are good. You know, the raw organic sugar, a lot of people are like, can't we just get raw organic sugar? And it's true. You're going to do better with raw organic sugar because you'll have more of the minerals in there. Sometimes I say to people, just because it gives them an idea, it's like we've focused so much in our industry, our agriculture and our food industry on cleaning, whatever that means, like cleaning foods. We throw chemicals in to bleach them and to separate them, and all of a sudden we end up with this substance or product that really doesn't resemble nature at all. And so raw organic cane sugar is certainly going to be better. Like if you're consuming something and you look at it and it says raw organic cane sugar, well, that's going to be better than some other options. It actually is better even than just straight fructose or just straight, agave even.
But agave's in tequila. I thought that was good.
Yeah, well, because it's in tequila, it's good.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my logic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So as long as tequila is good for you.
You don't get the bad hangovers when you drink tequila because they have this natural sugar called agave.
Yeah. Well, so agave actually has a lot of fructose in it. So it's a fruit type of sugar, the agave.
I don't even know what fructose is. Let's talk about the bad stuff.
So fructose, okay.
Tell me what to avoid.
Okay, so let's go sweeteners, the bad. So really the ones you want to avoid, and there's a caveat there because both agave and you could say fructose can be considered natural. Those are still natural sugars, right? It's just that fructose on its own in high amounts can be problematic for the gut, can be problematic for a lot of patients with metabolic issues. And so if you're...
So what is fructose?
So fructose is sugar. It's fruit sugar specifically.
So
fructose
when it's separated from the fiber, then
that's right.
Okay, so if you just juiced the fruit,
you take the fruit, you get rid of the fiber. Even if you take the fruit and you process it through juicing, right, you're still going to have more nutrients than you would through this factory process of saying, okay, I have this white powder now that I'm going to add to a substance, and this white powder happens to be fructose. That is refined, processed fructose that is extracted from fruit or agave or other areas or foods that have higher amounts of fructose in it. So it's a very strong flavor for our brains, right? To encounter, and so a lot of people really like fructose. We actually can utilize fructose, like if we're manufacturing a product. I would say fructose on very small amounts, like if you can keep your fructose level around 1, like 1 gram, right, of fructose. If you can keep it below 5 grams, fantastic. That's much better, right? Or if you can just see that
grams, I mean, is anybody out there measuring this stuff?
Well, it's on the bottle.
Oh,
like
is
if
it?
you're buying a product, it'll say
how much
fructose X amount, right? This many grams.
I was just picturing someone weighing it out at home, and I'm like, if they're super health conscious to the point they're weighing their food, are they really avoiding the sweeteners? I don't know. That felt like a bodybuilder thing to be like,
to weigh everything out. I need this protein. Then I need my fat over here. And
weighing it on the scale. I'm like, okay, but it's on the bottle. I got it.
Yeah, this is like you bought a product and you're looking at the ingredients. That's what I'm thinking of. And some of them will have fructose, some will have agave.
What should people avoid when they see this on the label? Fructose is one of them.
Yeah, fructose and agave. Actually, I would avoid agave if you can, and avoid sugar alcohols. So sugar alcohols are things like erythritol, xylitol, and sorbitol. So these I'm calling the bad because they actually have some problematic health concerns.
Because you haven't even mentioned like high fructose corn syrup.
No, we haven't gotten there.
Yeah. Okay. You're talking about the ones that people.
Those are the ugly.
Yeah. Oh, these are the bad. These are the ones that people might think are okay, but these are actually bad. Okay.
Well, yeah, and they can be okay in small amounts. Okay. That's why they're the bad. Right?
Okay.
So it's like if you have, if you use a little bit of these things, this is not the end of the world. If you are consuming a substance or a product and it has some agave in it, that's a better choice than the ugly.
So what are these sugar alcohols? Because I was telling you, I have this natural mouthwash that I think it says xylitol on it. You're like erythritol, xylitol, and sorbitol. Like, what do they do to the body? Why are they bad?
Yeah, so erythritol, xylitol, and sorbitol they're genetically modified. Typically, they come from cornstarch. They're produced from cornstarch, most of them, and they're genetically modified to interfere with their absorption or to minimize the absorption through the gut. And so, anything that is pushing to be adapted to prevent its ability to cross the gut barrier is going to cause some level of dysfunction or even irritation to the gut lining. So consuming these in small amounts actually has not proven and does not prove to be a problem. But consuming these in repeated, frequent amounts, if you're consuming a product every day that has one of these sweeteners in it, erythritol, xylitol, or sorbitol, and you're like, yeah, this is something I need to do. Well, it's at some point even the endothelial lining and the lining of the gut and the GI, it's going to have a disruption in its integrity, and so it begins to prevent not just itself from crossing the gut barrier, but then it begins to prevent other things from crossing the gut barrier, which you would otherwise want to be taking up. So, in large amounts, let's put it that way, erythritol, xylitol, and sorbitol have been found to disrupt gut flora.
Okay.
So that would be a bad thing. We don't want that to be occurring.
I gotcha.
Okay. So do you want to talk about the ugly now? Because I know you're itching to do it.
I just want to know, I try to avoid these, but in the real world, people are getting their sweetened coffees, their frappuccinos with all kinds, a lot of people may not even be super Splenda, conscious about the sweeteners that are entering their body.
And typically when we're talking about coffee or we're talking about at a diner, right, these different things, there's a little packet or there's a little thing of cream even, but there's a packet and it'll say Splenda, or some of them will even actually say sucralose. So sucralose, aspartame, saccharin, these are things that you want to avoid like the plague. Don't even go around them. If the product has aspartame, if it has sucralose, if it has saccharin, you just want to completely avoid that as a sweetener. Okay, so saccharin was actually once linked to, in research, cancer and cancer production, development within animal studies especially. Aspartame, I have a memory from when I was a kid. And a friend of ours, we were out on a camping trip and we were drinking this, because you go out on a camping trip and you have sodas, and especially as a Boy Scouts, right? So you have lots of soda and drinks and things like that. So there's red dye, there's aspartame, and a variety of different things that are in these drinks that we were consuming. And all of a sudden, this friend of ours started going crazy, really hyperactive, incredibly hyperactive. And we were just all laughing at it and having a fun time. And we thought that it was just, as boys, we didn't know. We were 12, 13 years old. But when I think back to that, I realize he had a reaction to the dye and to the aspartame that was in the drink, and it had neurologically affected him. It was pushing so hard, it was neurotoxic on his brain, and he was just reacting essentially the way...
It wasn't just the caffeine?
No. It wasn't actually a caffeinated drink.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because we were like, well, we probably shouldn't take caffeinated drink.
Right.
It was a a good LDS function,
Sure.
I guess you could say. But
I noticed
we
a
had
lot of folks in the LDS community, I'm not a part of it,
they still drink
a lot
caffeine.
of soda, and they have lots of caffeine. So I don't know. I look at soda as poison, and I see kids drinking soda at gatherings, and I'm like, how are you letting your kids do this? And I'm like, maybe I'm just too, me being this is not going to help the world. Like, I need to come at it with a softer approach, but not being the guy you are and just trusting people that I think are smart and believing generally what you're saying. I just, I don't want my kids drinking soda. It looks like it's so bad for them. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people drink. They drink in copious amounts, but that's my opinion on it. So anyway, I do see a lot of people drinking soda, every community, everywhere in the country and world. But I just do notice that, like, folks in the LDS community don't drink coffee, but I see them with their Mountain Dews or alcohol, but I see them with their Mountain Dews, and I'm like, the clean living is great, but the soda is not.
Yeah. And these are what I would call, and there was actually a talk given on this in BYU, and it's called The Plagues of Prosperity. And so if anybody wants to look that up, you can see this talk that was given. But it's called
Sounds like must-see TV.
Plagues. Oh, yeah. It's Plagues of Prosperity. But it's interesting because it's a research group on insulin and blood sugar.
Oh.
And the diseases, and we should do a podcast on this, and we could just talk about the diseases, basically cover that talk. But essentially, it's like all of your modern diseases are related to what you put in your mouth. And so it's blood sugar, it's insulin related, right? And it's like every single day, if you're taking that soda, if you're not paying attention to the dyes, the flavorings, the artificial sweeteners that you're exposed to, you will be developing a condition that is one of the most common lifestyle illnesses that we know today. So
diabetes?
These are things like diabetes, metabolic disorders, cancers, tumors, polycystic ovarian syndrome, even low testosterone. All of these lifestyle behaviors of foods that you consume are related to causing essentially those issues and conditions.
What's more important, sleep or food?
Sleep or food? That's a good question right there. Well, it's certainly not good to consume your food when you should be sleeping. And it's not good to be sleeping when you should be consuming food. And a lot of our patients do feel tired throughout the entire day. So if you feel tired throughout the day and fatigued and lethargic during a period when you should be fueling and metabolizing and taking that energy up as fuel, so you're feeling like you should sleep when you should be consuming and working and producing, that's a problem. That's metabolic disease. That should be number one sign to you of, I am not metabolizing, which is cellular production of energy in the body. I'm not metabolizing well. Why is that happening? Well, if there are any of these nefarious sweeteners that you're consuming on a regular basis, or if you're consuming products that have a significant list of ingredients that include chemicals and dyes and additives, that is at least one explanation. But that by reducing and eliminating those, I mean, I have patients all the time. Since I stopped drinking soda, I feel so good. Like, yeah, well, you were cranking your adrenals, you were drinking so much soda, so much caffeine, so much sugar. So it's like you're not only getting the boost from the sugar, the dopamine kick, right? But you're getting the boost from the caffeine as well. So it's like you're just cranking. And of course that's overwhelming. I mean, if anyone is going to stimulate you, we talk about insulin resistance and how that develops. It's like someone tapping you like this, tapping the cell, insulin saying, hey, we need to get more sugar in.
Yeah.
Eventually you're just like, hey, knock it off.
Right.
Knock it off, and you're going to create a barrier or resistance to that. And that's what happens. So you keep getting the hit, Eventually your body's going to say, something's wrong here. We shouldn't be functioning like this. So we're going to become resistant to it. And then what happens is you need more of it.
Interesting. I hear a lot about diet soda, and I feel like we may not even know all the things because we have these.
Diet soda is saccharin, aspartame.
And aspartame, but I hear that it doesn't necessarily spike your blood sugar. So some people say
correct.
You can drink diet soda while fasting and it's okay. And other people say yeah, you can, but you know what I mean? There's that but of like, there's these other ingredients here. And I've heard certain people say the sugar in the regular soda is very bad for you, but then the aspartame in the diet soda is bad. But what I've heard that seems to be just some evidence, I could be wrong about aspartame, is it messes up your gut.
Correct.
So
it absolutely does, but it interferes with neurological function.
I was gonna say, is the jury out though on diet soda with the other stuff that you want to say it's bad for, but you can't prove yet, but you know aspartame's bad? Or what do we know about the diet soda?
What we know is that they use saccharin oftentimes, and they'll use aspartame, or they'll use sucralose in diet soda. Like those are typically the ones, and usually it's aspartame or saccharin. And those sweeteners have been found. Like if you have if you have diet soda and it's stevia, right? You're very likely going to be okay to do that. But if it's saccharin or aspartame that they're sweetening it with, then it's a problem. So again, saccharin has been linked to tumorigenesis, which essentially is the development of cancer. Aspartame has been linked to neurological issues, ADHD, even Alzheimer development. When you have a disruption in the gut and the GI, which a lot of these artificial sweeteners do, remember there's a gut-brain connection. That gut-brain connection, we have more neurotransmitters produced in our gut than anywhere else. And those neurotransmitters have to get from the gut to the neurological system. And they're like the wheels. It's like the grease on the wheels of the neurological system. So if that starts dysfunctioning because you don't have the grease on the wheels, like the same thing that happens in your car. If you don't maintain your car properly and you start giving it something that doesn't actually or interferes with properly greasing the wheels, what's going to happen? You're going to be riding down the road and eventually at some point you're going to have a problem. You're going to lose a wheel, or you're going to just have one seize up, right? Because the bearings are all just seized up. So it's critical to make sure that we're delivering to the body as natural ingredients as possible, coming as close to from farm to table as possible. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why I say I favor honey. That's why I say I favor organic maple syrup, dates, things that we actually can consider to be food, not just a food product. So if you can actually say, okay, this came literally from the farm to my table, which honey is the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, when it comes to sweeteners, nature often knows best.
Nature knows best.
Isn't that wild?
Oh, that is 100% the truth, though, right? And it has built into it, usually nature's sweeteners, which fruit is one of them. You eat fruit in a whole form. It's built into it the ability to be able to mitigate the potential spiking or the potential nefarious effects that might be happening to the body as a result of the sugar. But it also has a mission. The mission is your body needs sugar. The mitochondria is what produces the energy for your body, and it requires sugar. It requires the glucose in order to develop the ATP. And so if we get overwhelmed with spikes of sugar, then the mitochondrial system actually becomes broken down, and it can't function as well because it's overwhelmed, literally putting way too much on its plate in certain times of consuming. Whereas when you consume a fruit, even though it's sweet, even though it has fructose, but it has the fiber, it has polyphenols, it has all of these antioxidants and these other chemicals and food products that are designed to balance out the potential nefarious effects. So I use that word nefarious, but essentially what I would say that you're trying to avoid as much as possible is processing. So think about how something had to be processed, or how much it was processed, or what the process was to get it to you. And honey is actually a product that does not need processing, but usually our honey on the shelf, the honey bear that we've talked about before, it is processed.
You know what's sad to me about all this is I want to teach my kids to be trusting, and I want to trust. I want to open up my heart and just like believe in the best in people. But the reality is, and I think it can turn us into maybe being too conspiratorial and too skeptical, but we have to be, I think, sometimes with our health, is you have to just be on guard because you want to trust that all the food that is sitting on your table in a packet that says, coffee sweetener is safe, and at the store, and the popsicles that they're giving to your kids at the school events. And like, when I think about my kids, it just gets me thinking so hard, but it's like, you want to trust that these foods are okay. But the reality is most of them, we're born into this society where everything is marketed to us with a surplus of dopamine and hyped up stuff and bad ingredients. And it's just a system that we live in. So we have to be on guard about it. But I don't want to be that guy who's like, I feel so other than most people when I'm so worried about all the food I eat. I don't want to live in all that anxiety.
Right.
And yet the dance is there for a reason, because this stuff is really bad for you, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And as a nugget maybe to go home with, right? It's things that you may want to also look out for that have fallen out of favor in the food industry. And what they do is they'll change the name oftentimes. So high fructose corn syrup, right? Or they might identify certain things by tapioca syrup or brown rice solids. So they start using other terms so that you don't recognize it or identify it as a high sweetener, right? So what I would also encourage you to do at the end, and I've always done this with my patients, is be willing to write the ingredients down and look them up. Like, look up the ingredients. If you don't know what it is, I wouldn't eat it until you know what the ingredient is, right? You're like, sodium benzoate. What's that? What's sodium benzoate? Maybe I should look that up. Should it be in my food? Is it preservative? What's the impact that it has on my body? There are all sorts of chemicals and different ways that you can change the wording to describe the same chemical, right? Or the same compound. You just change the name a little bit, and then all of a sudden you have a product. Even though you're putting the same product in there, you have the ability to change the name. And so then people don't recognize it as such.
It's happening out there.
I hope that everyone is going to enjoy the sweetness of life.
And be well now.
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.